heard that President Bush got an early start on his last-minute regulatory changes because incoming presidents can easily undo them if they are done after November 1st. You may have not heard, and Mr. Bush apparently had not either, that an obscure little law could make it easy for Democrats to undo any last-minute Bush regulations enacted any time in the last 6 months of his presidency. As a wise man once said, pretty sneaky, sis, diagonally. Our fourth story tonight on Mr. Bush's attempts to extend his legacy, the question we will ask of Mr. Obama nightly until his inauguration, what do we do now? As Bill Clinton discovered, it can be very tough to undo those last-minute zingers. Politico reports Clinton amended almost half of the first President Bush's last-minute rules, but managed to repeal just 9% of them. This President Bush could only repeal 3% of President Clinton's. But now Politico reports Democrats are looking at a 1990s law that could let Congress, on simple party line votes, undo even some of those last-minute rules that Mr. Bush tried to get in early. Let's bring in Jonathan Turley, the professor of constitutional law at George Washington University. Good to talk to you again, John.
Hi, Keith.
Baseline question first. Why is it often so tough to undo those regulations? I mean, Bush undid, most of the Bill of Rights. What's the difficulty with something with a few regulations here?
Well, this is the ultimate dead hand control. What a president can do is by finalizing a regulation, he can force his successor to go through an entirely new regulatory process that can take years. And what that means in real terms is that you can have an Obama administration that continues to carry out George Bush's directives. And for people who elected Obama for change, that's a particularly obnoxious reality to accept.
The ultimate dead hand president we see on the right of the screen here. But the Washington Post over the weekend, the Obama team spent months going through all of the Bush decisions, especially the political ones that they think they could undo, global warming, stem cell research, things like that. And what is the difference between those things and these last-minute regulations and against the deadline stuff?
Well, the Bush administration is putting on a full court press. They're pushing for the finalization of regulations while they're also pushing for executive orders to be implemented. Those executive orders are easier to undo. President Obama can come in with his own superseding executive orders. Now, these include some executive orders that are classified that President Obama will be able to unravel. Things such as Guantanamo Bay and other very hot-button issues are often contained in executive orders rather than regulations. Those regulations, however, is what really concerns people the most because to push through a regulation at the end of an administration is akin to fouling the water well. It is almost a sign of contempt for the results of the election. Now, President Bush is not the first to do that. President Clinton did that. It's not particularly good form. But most importantly, we're talking about regulations that go to the heart of the recent election. We're talking about environmental regulations, a lot of issues that the public clearly indicated they wanted to change on.
And John, having given the background to this, what is this law that the Obama people think that they have found? What exactly is this promise of blessed relief?
Well, this is the Congressional Review Act of 1996. And the Congressional Review Act is designed to prevent presidents in the final hours of their administration of creating this dead hand control. What it does is it creates something of a fiction. It says that if you push it through in the final days of your administration, it won't be considered final until the new Congress comes in. So if you do this closer at the end of the previous Congress, Congress gave itself extra time to reverse it. The key here, however, is time. We're not going to have a lot of time, and we're talking about a lot of regulations and a lot of executive orders. And that's why Obama reportedly has a team of dozens of people who are trying to unravel this very complex web of executive orders and regulations to use that time efficiently.
So then paint the scenario for me about exactly what this looks like in the Senate and the House on the last days of January of next year. Is there a flurry of legislations in which a dozen of these are repealed at the same time, or one giant get rid of Bush bill, or how does it work?
Well, they could do it in an omnibus manner like that, and I expect that they may have to. What is strange about this administration is that President Bush has a certain benefit in being the least popular president in modern history, in that you really can't statistically go any lower. And that seems to, in a strange way, have freed up his subordinates, where they are trying to just run the table and move every regulation, executive order they can to try to create this control. And I think that Congress, if it's going to deal with this, is going to be dealing with literally hundreds of executive orders and regulations, and also hundreds of signing statements by this president. And eventually they're going to have to tackle each one of those individually to give Obama the right to direct his own administration.
Yeah, it's like one of those booths at those minor league baseball games where the contestant steps in and they have all the dollar bills blowing around and you grab as many of them as you can. That's the Bush administration in the final days.
Something like that.
Yeah, close enough. You don't have to sign on to that. Constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley, as always, John, great thanks.
Thanks, Keith.